The morning I collapsed in my kitchen, I was making lemon pound cake. Not for anyone special, just for myself. That's what 72 years of living teaches you. If you want cake, bake your own. Because nobody else is going to do it for you. My name is Dorothy Ashford. I live alone in a 5-bedroom colonial on Birch Hill Road in Savannah, Georgia. The same house my late husband Franklin built with his own architectural drawings back in 1986. Franklin was the kind of man who believed a house should outlast the people who lived in it. Sturdy bones, good foundation, wide porches for sitting and watching the world go slow. He designed homes for a living. Beautiful ones. Some of the finest in the Southeast. When he died 7 years ago, a stroke that took him on a Tuesday afternoon while he was sketching at his drafting table, he left behind a portfolio of properties, a brokerage account worth several million, and 2 daughters who couldn't be more different if they'd been born to separate families. My eldest, Victoria, was 46. She lived right here in Savannah, 25 minutes from my front door. Though you'd think it was 2,500 miles given how often she visited. Victoria married a man named Craig Hollister, a commercial developer with slicked back hair and opinions about everything. Together, they lived in a glass and steel monstrosity in the new subdivision. The kind of house Franklin would have hated. Victoria worked as a corporate attorney for a firm downtown. She was brilliant, I'll give her that. Always had been. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Emory. Law review. Franklin was so proud, but somewhere between her second year of law school and her first corner office, my daughter stopped seeing me as a mother and started seeing me as an account balance. My younger daughter, Rosemary, lived in Burlington, Vermont. She'd moved there after college to work for a nonprofit that helped homeless veterans find housing. The pay was modest, the winters were brutal, but Rosemary was happy in a way Victoria never seemed to be. She called me every Sunday, sometimes twice. She sent photographs of her garden, her 2 boys, her rescue dog. When Franklin died, Rosemary flew down immediately and stayed for 3 weeks. She helped me sort through his things, held my hand at the funeral, sat with me on the porch those first silent evenings when the absence of him felt like a wound I could physically touch. Victoria came to the funeral, gave a lovely eulogy, and flew back to her office the next morning. That was 7 years ago. Since then, the distance between my eldest daughter and me had grown wider with each passing season. Victoria visited on holidays, sometimes. She sent gift baskets at Christmas, generic ones from some catalog, the kind with crackers and cheese spreads that nobody actually eats. Craig never came at all. He had better things to do. Their daughter, Meredith, my only grandchild from that side, was 19 now, and studying finance at Vanderbilt. She texted me occasionally, usually when she needed money for something. I had given Victoria a great deal over the years. Not because she asked, because I wanted to. When she and Craig bought that ridiculous house, I gave them $200,000 for the down payment. When Craig's development company hit a rough patch, I wrote a check for $350,000 to keep them afloat. When Victoria wanted to start her own law practice, I invested $175,000. When Craig needed a new partner buy-in, another $200,000. I kept a ledger in my desk drawer, not because I expected repayment, but because I wanted to remember. The total, as of that morning when I was making lemon pound cake, stood at $925,000. Rosemary had never asked me for a penny. The kitchen floor was cold when I hit it. I remember the sound of the mixing bowl clattering off the counter, the spray of batter across the tile, then a crushing pressure in my chest, like someone had reached inside my ribcage and squeezed. My left arm went numb. My vision blurred. I crawled to the counter and pulled my phone down by the charging cord. I managed to dial 911 before everything went dark. I woke up in Memorial Health with tubes in my arm and a monitor beeping beside me. Dr. Patel, my cardiologist, was a compact woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking. She told me I'd had a massive heart attack. 2 arteries were severely blocked. I needed a double bypass, and I needed it soon. The surgery was scheduled for Thursday, 5 days away. My first call was to Rosemary. She answered on the second ring. When I told her, she started crying. "Mom, I'm booking a flight right now. I'll be there tomorrow. Don't do anything until I get there. Her youngest son, Ethan, had a school play that week. I told her it could wait. She said, "Mom, are you out of your mind? My son's playing a tree in a third-grade musical. You're having heart surgery. I'm coming." My second call was to Victoria. It rang 4 times before she picked up. She was in a meeting. I could hear voices in the background, someone laughing. "Mom, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something." I told her about the heart attack, about the surgery. There was a pause. "Oh my God," she said. "Are you okay? I mean, are you stable?" I told her I was stable but scared. I asked her to come to the hospital. There was another pause, longer this time. "Mom, this week is really complicated. Craig and I are leaving for the Maldives on Wednesday. It's our anniversary trip. We booked it 8 months ago." I sat there holding the phone, listening to the silence between us. "Your surgery is Thursday?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Okay," she said slowly. "Let me see what I can do. I'll call you tonight." She didn't call that night, or the next morning. At noon the following day, I sent her a text. Just a simple one. "Thinking of you. Hope to see you before Thursday." The reply came an hour later. "Mom, I talked to Craig. The resort is non-refundable. We'd lose $42,000. But I called the hospital, and they said, your surgeon is one of the best in the state. You're in good hands. I'll come visit as soon as we get back. 2 weeks." That was it. $42,000. The price of being present when your mother might die. I stared at that message for a long time. I read it again and again, trying to find some hidden tenderness, some buried anguish, some sign that my daughter was torn apart by this decision. But the words were flat, efficient, like a memo from her law office. Rosemary arrived the next morning, Tuesday, looking exhausted from the red-eye flight, but smiling. She brought me a quilt she'd made herself, patchwork squares from old family fabrics, and a bag of my favorite ginger candies. She sat beside my bed and held my hand and told me about her boys, about the dog, about the funny woman at the post office in Burlington who always mispronounced her name. She made me laugh for the first time since I'd hit the kitchen floor. "Has Victoria called?" Rosemary asked carefully. I showed her the text. Rosemary's face went very still. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the parking lot. "That's $42,000, she said quietly. "You gave her $900,000, and she won't lose $42,000 to be here when you could die." I didn't answer. There was nothing to answer. On Wednesday morning, my neighbor Helen Beckett came to visit. Helen was 68, a retired school principal, widowed 3 years. We'd been friends for over a decade, the kind of friendship that runs on shared coffee and comfortable silence. Her daughter, Nora, worked as a surgical nurse at Memorial Health. Helen had asked Nora to keep an eye on me. Nora stopped by my room that evening after her shift. She was in her early 30s, tall and calm with steady hands, and a face that belonged on a recruitment poster for people who actually care about their jobs. She checked my chart, asked how I was feeling, adjusted my IV. When she noticed my red eyes, she sat down. "You've been crying," she said. "Not a question. I'm having open heart surgery tomorrow, and my eldest daughter is on her way to the Maldives," I said. I figured I was entitled to a few tears. Nora nodded slowly. "Mrs. Ashford, I've been a nurse for 11 years. I've held hands with hundreds of patients before their surgeries. Some of them had a room full of family. Some of them had nobody." She paused. "I want you to know that you won't be alone tomorrow. I've requested to be on your surgical team. Dr. Kapoor is the best cardiac surgeon in Georgia, and I'll be right there the whole time." Something broke open in me when she said that. This woman, who owed me nothing, who had known me for less than a day, was offering me more comfort than my own daughter had in a 3-sentence text. "Thank you, Nora," I whispered. She squeezed my hand and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hospital hummed around me. Machines, footsteps, distant murmurs. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the things I'd done for Victoria. The money, The time, the excuses I'd made for her selfishness. Year after year, she's busy, she's stressed, she has a lot on her plate. Craig is difficult, her job is demanding. I had constructed an elaborate architecture of justification, as carefully designed as any of Franklin's buildings, and it had taken one text message to bring it all crashing down. At 3 in the morning, I picked up my phone and called a number I hadn't dialed in a long time. Arthur Sinclair, Franklin's oldest friend, our family attorney. He answered on the fifth ring, groggy but alert. Dorothy? Is everything all right? Arthur, I need to change my will. I need you to come to the hospital first thing in the morning, before my surgery. There was a long silence. Then he said, I'll be there at 7. Arthur arrived at 6:45, because that's the kind of man he was. Tall, thin, impeccably dressed even at dawn, with a leather briefcase that smelled of old money and good decisions. He pulled up a chair beside my bed and looked at me with those pale blue eyes that miss nothing. Tell me what you want, he said. I told him everything. About Victoria's text. About the Maldives. About $925,000 given freely, and a $42,000 resort that mattered more than my life. About Rosemary, who dropped everything, who always dropped everything. About Nora, a woman I barely knew, who'd volunteered to stand beside me in the operating room. Arthur listened without interrupting. When I finished, he opened his briefcase. My current will was simple. Franklin had set it up, everything divided equally between Victoria and Rosemary upon my death, with trust funds for the grandchildren. Standard, fair, the kind of will that assumes your children are equally decent human beings. I want to change everything, I said. Arthur nodded. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He didn't suggest I was being emotional or rash. He simply asked me what I wanted and wrote it down. We worked for over an hour. Rosemary came in halfway through, saw Arthur with his papers, and raised her eyebrows. Mom, what's going on? I'm taking care of some things before the surgery, I said. In case something happens. She looked worried but didn't push. That was Rosemary. Always respecting boundaries, even when she was scared. She kissed my forehead and said she'd be in the waiting room. 2 nurses witnessed the signing. Arthur notarized everything, sealed the documents, and tucked them into his briefcase. Before he left, he squeezed my hand. Franklin would be proud of you, he said. You've always been the strongest person I know. The surgery lasted 6 hours. I don't remember most of it. I remember the cold of the operating room. I remember Dr. Kapoor's calm voice counting down. I remember looking up and seeing Nora's eyes above her mask, steady and reassuring. Then nothing. I woke up in intensive care feeling like someone had parked a truck on my chest. Every breath was a negotiation with pain. The incision burned. My sternum ached with a deep, grinding throb that no amount of morphine could fully quiet. I learned something in those first days of recovery that I wish I'd never had to learn. The human ribcage does not appreciate being cracked open and wired back together. The pain was extraordinary. Not sharp, exactly, but relentless. A constant, grinding presence that colored everything. Turning in bed was agony. Coughing was a nightmare. Laughing was unthinkable. Rosemary was there when I opened my eyes. She stayed for 12 days. She slept in the chair beside my bed, ate hospital cafeteria food, helped me with my breathing exercises, held the pillow against my chest when I coughed, because the physical therapist said it would ease the pressure on my sternum. She read to me in the evenings, mystery novels from the hospital gift shop, and she called her boys every night on speakerphone so I could hear their voices. Nora checked on me every day, even on her days off. She brought me homemade soup her mother had made, adjusted my medications when she noticed I was in more pain than I let on, and taught me the breathing exercises that would help my lungs recover. She was gentle and competent, and she never once looked at her phone while she was with me. Victoria texted from the Maldives on the 4th day after surgery. How's the recovery going? Hope you're feeling better. Craig says hi. She attached a photo of herself on a white sand beach, cocktail in hand, sunset behind her. I stared at that photo for 5 full minutes. Then I put the phone face down on the nightstand and asked Rosemary to read me another chapter. I was discharged after 2 weeks. Rosemary drove me home, set up a bed downstairs so I wouldn't have to climb stairs, stocked the kitchen, hired a visiting nurse for the days she couldn't be there, and stayed another week to make sure I was settled. Helen came over every afternoon with food. Nora stopped by after her shifts to check my vitals and adjust my medications. I was surrounded by love, just not from the person who should have been there first. 3 weeks after my surgery, Victoria finally came home from the Maldives. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon, breezy and relaxed. "Mom, we just got back. The trip was absolutely incredible. How are you feeling?" "Better," I said. "The surgery went well. See? I told you everything would be fine. Listen, Craig and I want to come over this weekend. We'll bring dinner. Maybe that Thai place you like? That would be nice." They showed up Saturday evening. Victoria looked tanned and rested. Craig looked like Craig. They brought pad thai in takeout containers and a bottle of wine I couldn't drink because of my medications. Victoria kissed my cheek and immediately began inspecting the house, noticing the new hospital bed in the living room, the pill organizers on the kitchen counter, the stack of magazines Nora had brought. "Who's been helping you?" she asked with a little frown. "Rosemary was here for 3 weeks. Helen and her daughter Nora have been coming by regularly." Victoria's frown deepened. "The neighbor's daughter? A nurse?" "She was on my surgical team," I said. "She's been monitoring my recovery." "She's excellent." "Well, that's nice of her," Victoria said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "But we're here now. You don't need to rely on strangers." I looked at my daughter. Tanned, manicured, wearing a cashmere sweater that cost more than Nora's monthly rent. I thought about texting from a beach. While her mother recovered from open-heart surgery, I thought about $42,000. "Nora isn't a stranger," I said quietly. "She was with me when you weren't." Victoria's face went tight. "Mom, that's not fair. You know I wanted to be here. The trip was non-refundable. You gave me $925,000 over the years, Victoria. I've never asked for any of it back. I wasn't asking for money this time. I was asking for you." The room went very quiet. Craig suddenly became fascinated by his pad thai. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "Neither did I." I took a sip of my tea. "But since you're here, there's something you should know. I changed my will before the surgery." The color drained from Victoria's face so fast I thought she might need medical attention herself. Craig stopped chewing. "What do you mean, changed it?" Victoria asked. "I mean, I called Arthur Sinclair, and I restructured everything. But we had an arrangement. Dad's will said, everything splits equally." "Your father's been gone 7 years," I said. "I've had time to observe how his children turned out, and I've made decisions accordingly." "What decisions?" Craig asked, dropping all pretense of politeness. "That's between me and my attorney," I replied. Victoria stood up. Her hands were shaking. "Mom, you were about to have major surgery. You were scared, emotional, probably on medication. That's not the time to make legal decisions." I was fully lucid. The nurses witnessed the signing. Arthur can attest to my mental state, and I wasn't on any medication at the time. I made sure of that. Victoria stared at me. I stared back. For the first time in my life, I didn't look away first. They left 20 minutes later. The pad thai sat untouched on the counter. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from Craig. "Dorothy, I think we should talk about this rationally. There may have been a misunderstanding. Let's all sit down with Arthur and sort this out." I didn't respond. The next morning, Arthur called me. "Your son-in-law came to my office this morning," he said. "Demanded to see the new will. When I refused, he threatened to have you declared mentally incompetent. I told him I had 2 independent witnesses and a signed medical evaluation confirming your capacity. He then offered me $50,000 to, and I quote, lose the paperwork and restore the original document." I closed my eyes. "Of course he did." I declined. "Naturally," Arthur continued. "And I suggested he leave before I called the Bar Association about his attorney wife attempting to interfere with a client's estate through her husband. He left quickly after that. Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Victoria began visiting every Saturday. She brought flowers, home-cooked meals, books she thought I'd enjoy. She helped me with my physical therapy exercises. She even asked about my recovery, with what appeared to be genuine interest. Craig came too, smiling, attentive, carrying grocery bags, and offering to fix things around the house. It was, frankly, the most attention Victoria had paid me since she was 12 years old, and I knew exactly why. But I played along. I watched. I noted everything. Who came out of obligation? Who came out of love? The difference, once you know what to look for, is unmistakable. Obligation shows up on time and checks its watch. Love shows up early and forgets to leave. 3 months after my surgery, I was strong enough to host a gathering. I called everyone: Victoria and Craig, Rosemary, who flew down from Burlington with her boys, Meredith, my granddaughter from Vanderbilt, Helen, Nora, Arthur. They all assembled in my living room on a Sunday afternoon in early spring. The dogwoods were blooming outside, Franklin's favorite season. I sat in my chair by the window, wearing the blue dress he always loved, and I looked at the faces of the people I had gathered. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "I know some of you have questions about what I did before my surgery. I'd like to address those questions now." Victoria sat rigid on the sofa, clutching Craig's arm. Rosemary sat cross-legged on the floor with her boys, relaxed but attentive. Nora and Helen were on the love seat. Arthur stood by the fireplace with his briefcase. 7 years ago, when Franklin died, he left me with 2 things: a fortune and a family. The fortune has grown. The family, I'm not so sure about. I looked at Victoria. She looked at the floor. Before my surgery, I was scared. Not of dying, exactly, but of dying forgotten. Of dying in a hospital room, while the people I'd given everything to were somewhere else, doing something more important. And when my daughter chose a $42,000 vacation over being with me during the most dangerous moment of my life, I realized I had been confusing generosity with love. I gave money and expected love in return. That was my mistake. Money doesn't create love. It creates expectation. The room was completely silent. "So here's what I've decided," I continued. "Arthur, if you would." Arthur opened his briefcase and distributed documents. "First, I have given Nora Beckett $250,000, effective immediately. This is not payment for services. This is a thank you to a woman who held my heart in her hands, literally, and who showed me more compassion in 1 week than I had received from certain family members in 7 years. Nora's hand flew to her mouth. "Mom," Helen whispered beside her. "Second, I have established education trusts for each of my grandchildren, Rosemary's boys, Jackson and Ethan, and Victoria's daughter, Meredith. Each trust holds $200,000, accessible at age 25, administered by Arthur. No parent has access to these funds." Meredith looked stunned. Rosemary's boys looked at their mother, confused. She squeezed their shoulders. "Third, I have placed the remainder of my estate, including this house and all investment accounts, into a living trust. I will manage this trust for the rest of my life. Each year, on my birthday, I will review how my family has treated me, not just with visits and phone calls, but with genuine care, honesty, and respect. Based on that review, I will direct the annual income from the trust to those who have earned it, not performed it, earned it." Victoria's face was white. "What do you mean, earned it?" she asked, her voice thin. "I mean exactly what I said. I'm done rewarding indifference. I'm done funding people who see me as a bank account with a heartbeat. If you want to be part of this family's future, show me you're part of this family's present. Not with expensive Thai food and guilt flowers. With time. With honesty. With the kind of love that doesn't check its watch." Rosemary spoke first. "Mom, are you sure about this? I don't want this to tear us apart." I looked at my younger daughter, the one who'd slept in a hospital chair for 12 days, who'd held the pillow against my chest when I coughed, who'd never asked me for a single dollar in her entire life. "It's already torn," sweetheart, I said gently. I'm just choosing to repair it honestly, instead of papering over the cracks with money. Victoria stood up. This is emotional manipulation, she said, her attorney voice surfacing. You're using your wealth to control us. No, I said calmly. Control is what you and Craig tried to do when you offered Arthur $50,000 to destroy my will. What I'm doing is making a choice. There's a difference. Victoria went very pale. Craig put his face in his hands. Arthur cleared his throat. For the record, he said, the documents are legally sound. Mrs. Ashford was of full mental capacity when they were signed. I have witnesses, medical evaluations, and documentation of the entire process. Any attempt to contest this will would be expensive and unsuccessful. Victoria grabbed her purse. I need to leave, she said. Craig. Meredith. Let's go. Craig jumped up immediately, but Meredith didn't move. She sat in her chair, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen from that side of the family in a very long time. Something like respect. I'm staying, Grandma, she said quietly. If that's okay. Victoria turned at the door. Meredith. Go ahead, Mom, Meredith said. I'll get an Uber later. Victoria looked at her daughter, then at me, then at the room full of people who had shown up when she hadn't. Something flickered across her face. I couldn't tell if it was shame or anger or something else entirely. Then she walked out. Craig followed. The front door closed hard enough to rattle Franklin's drafting pencils in their cup on the mantel. The room exhaled. Nora was crying quietly. I can't accept this, Eloise. It's too much. I was just doing my job. You were doing far more than your job, I said. And the money is already transferred. If you try to give it back, I'll just give it to your mother, and she'll spend it all on garden supplies. Helen laughed through her own tears. She's not wrong, she said. Rosemary came to my chair and knelt beside me. She put her head on my arm, the way she used to when she was small. Mom, she whispered. I'm proud of you. I stroked her hair. I should have done this years ago, I said. Your father would have done it sooner. He always saw people more clearly than I did. After everyone left, after the dishes were cleared and the house was quiet, I sat in my chair by the window and watched the evening settle over the garden. The dogwoods were pink and white against the darkening sky. Franklin's magnolia tree, the one he planted the year we moved in, was just beginning to bud. I thought about Victoria. I wasn't angry anymore. I was sad. Sad for the girl she'd been, brilliant and ambitious and full of fire. Sad for the woman she'd become, calculating and cold, measuring everything in dollars. I had helped create that woman. Every check I wrote, every debt I forgave, every excuse I made, I had taught my daughter that love was transactional, that I could be bought and sold and scheduled around. But I also knew something else. Somewhere inside Victoria, underneath the cashmere and the corporate armor, there was still a little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper, Mommy, don't let the lightning get me. I had to believe that girl was still in there, and I had to give her a reason to come back. My phone buzzed. A text from Meredith. Grandma, thank you. Not for the money, for being honest. Nobody in this family is honest. You're the first one. I love you. I smiled and typed back. I love you too, sweetheart. Come for dinner next week. I'll make lemon pound cake. I set the phone down and looked out at the last light fading through the trees. My chest was still sore. It would be for months, the surgeon said. A reminder of what I'd been through, of how close I'd come to leaving this world without ever saying what needed to be said. But I had said it now. The truth was out. The money was where it belonged. And for the first time in 7 years, I felt something I hadn't felt since Franklin was alive. I felt like myself. The ball was in Victoria's court now. She could fight it, lawyer up, burn through money, trying to overturn a will that was ironclad. Or she could do the harder thing. She could show up, not for the inheritance, not for the house, not for the trust, just for me. Just because I was her mother and I was 72 years old, and I wouldn't be here forever. I didn't know which she'd choose, but I knew I'd be watching. And this time, I wouldn't be making excuses. Spring was coming. The magnolia was about to bloom. and I had a pound cake to finish.